This learning lab is part of the WISH EU project, where we host 10 learning labs about different topics. Today is the 5th session about technology, and next month we will have architecture, and you can find all information on the WISH EU website. And WISH EU, the focus of this project is to really understand the concept of detention houses from a European perspective, and not only detention houses as it is maybe explained in Belgium, but also different forms of small-scale houses that are used in the criminal justice system all over Europe. So this is something that we are trying to look at and understand much better.
So my name is Steven Van De Steene. I'm Belgian from origin, but I live in France, in southern France. And I'm specialized, almost my entire career in technology and in corrections, starting for probation services and moving on later to prison services. Until 2015, I was the CEO of the Belgian Prison Service, so responsible for all technology in Belgian prisons. And I also have been very involved in international projects. I was the founder of the ICT expert group within Europris, also with the IT technology solutions with the International Corrections and Prison Association. Maybe you're familiar with ICPA. I'm still a board member of ICPA. And since 2015, I'm active as a consultant, part-time consultant and part-time researcher related to the Montfort University in the United Kingdom, where I mainly work together with Professor Dr. Victoria Knight on all aspects of what's the impact of the digital to the penal system. And I am happy today to share a little bit of my ideas and how I work on this. But as Virik said, I really would like to have this as an interactive session. So please don't hesitate to ask questions so that we can have a conversation on this topic. So yeah, I'm just a one-man company, Smart Corrections, that my consulting part of my career, and where I mainly focus on designing technology for corrections. So I'm working on research and also helping correctional organizations with their digital strategy. But before I go into what the word design means, I just want to share my thoughts on digital transformation, because I know when people read about technology in organizations and companies, this is a term that is often used, and in my opinion, often not used correctly, because there is definitely a lot of push, pressure, drive to use as much as possible, as much technology as possible. But in fact, I'm always looking at technology as something we have to talk about, and I'm really happy to have this conversation today in the context of Rescale, to talk about it and to reflect on it, not with the aim of using more technology as a goal, but just to think about how technology can help and how new technology could help us do things better. But also on how technologies better should not be used, and we keep some analog processes and things in our organizations. And the second thing, part of the meaning of digital transformation is not the technology as such, but also as how do we as organization, as persons, adapt to a changing world. And I think that's very relevant when we talk about corrections, that we have people inside our systems, institutions, who we want to prepare to live a normal life, or as normal as possible outside. So, and that outside has changed a lot. And technology has played an important role in that change. So this is mainly how I look at digital transformation. I know that there are some people who are afraid of it, there is a lot of fear around it, there are a lot of discussions about it. I'm convinced that the only way we can assure that technology, when we use it, it's used for the good, is to have conversations and to take really time to look into the detail of the context and also the specific technology. So to avoid that it becomes a black and white discussion. So this is a little bit how I look at digital transformation and how I start working with customers and also doing my research. It's very broad. The technology in corrections and in prisons, in particularly, we have been using a lot of technology already for quite some time. Of course, mainly technology for surveillance purposes, some for efficiency purposes, but maybe not too much or not too long history on using technology, trying to use technology to help our rehabilitative initiatives. So this is something that is rather recently coming into the context of prisons. That complex world needs design. So that's what I've discovered when I was working first in probation, later in prisons, that technology often has been seen as something like done by some experts or nerds in a desk somewhere at the head office or somewhere hidden in the prison, and they do a lot of things nobody understands, and then we just shout to them if we have problems and so on. So it's really something that it's on a very isolated way. During decades, I think it has been treated like this, and I'm convinced that this is not the way we can guarantee that technology is used for the good and it's really used for helping us do our work better. So when as an enterprise architect, so I graduated as an enterprise architect at the University of Antwerp many years ago, and one of the basic things we learned is a little bit similar as an architect who constructs buildings, is that you start understanding your organization, and often very useful is to start with design principles. You just look to your organization and you look at what are the foundations of the reason why you are an organization or are doing things, and understand them and start from that to think about how technology can help. And when I'm looking and reading the presentation about rescaled and the detention houses, I saw three, I think they are important principles, which I think can be used as design principles for using technology in small-scale detention. So those are those three: small-scale, differentiation, and community integration. So just some ideas about this. First of all, the scale. I think it's a very interesting concept, detention houses, but in my opinion, it's very strongly focused to the physical scale of smaller physical locations. And when you're first reading literature and things what you do about detention houses, which is very important, but I think there are other forms of scale than only the physical scale. And I think the virtual scale could be one of them that it's worth looking at in the context of the work Rescaled is doing. I think that it has also shown in other contexts that technology can help creating other forms of scale. And my thought was, for example, if I hear some of the criticisms of on organizing detention, for example, in a small house, is that it's too small to organize some things, for example, or it's too small to be efficient. It's going to become too expensive if you create things on a smaller scale. And I think that the virtual technology as such already could help anticipate that maybe risk or criticisms on detention houses. One of the examples I always remember is when one of the first countries I remember talking me about, for example, organizing education in prisons, was Sweden, who has, I think, already for almost 25 years, a kind of virtual prison school, where, because they have a lot of smaller scale detention centers or prisons, they managed with that virtual school to create kind of class groups based on inmates that are at different locations. I thought it was a very good example of showing that technology can help overcome some issues you could have if you have a smaller scaled environments. This is something has been shown the last couple of years, especially also during COVID, that technology can be helpful to facilitate service delivery, if it's education or other services, from a distance to different locations. So I thought that was already something very interesting to look at when we talk about rescaled and smaller scaled detention. Another aspect on scale is also the delivery of technology as such. That's also something that used to be quite complicated and also expensive, because we needed to put a lot of infrastructure in every single facility for a lot of things, not only for basic computers, but also for cameras, for all the technology we use. I think modern concepts of technology, such as cloud computing and networking, I don't want to go too much in technical details, but can help also to deliver technology at a very high quality today to different locations. So we are less dependent on the physical aspect than we used to be. So also in that context, I think the technology can be used to overcome some complexity that we used to have, even when you have like very distant and smaller locations, or you have smaller, you have the criticism related to, okay, if you go small scale, you have it will become more expensive, which is not the case anymore today. A last thing I think it's also interesting to look at when we talk to scale is all aspects of supervision and security. I think also that is the scale. The current technologies are much more scalable than they used to be. So also on that level, we can use technology, I think, to overcome some issues or problems we have when we also looking at this type of technologies, and we want to do that, to use that at some point in our detention houses. A second thing I saw in principle that I saw was the differentiation. I think I started thinking about this a couple of years ago while I was reading some research done by I think it's a Dutch researcher, Kip, and some of her colleagues, about how a strong technology can help to differentiate the delivery of services, but it was not in prisons, it was in psychiatries. And it was what was really interesting to read how it really helps to tailor services and to different needs of different individuals. I think technology can be very powerful in helping to do that and helping to support on the individual based the delivery of services and to the individual needs. So it's possible to do that, and it's related to what we have seen, the movement, the last, I think, 2 decades on the what we call the consumerization of IT. It can be seen as a consumer as a negative thing about consuming, but it's more like the technology behind it is powerful to shape services really to the need of the individual. I think there are a lot of possibilities into that. Differentiation is also something that we have seen in the online learning sphere, where you really, and I already gave the example from Sweden already 20 years ago, but it showed that it's really possible today. Last week I was in Tunisia talking to some people who have studied online, and there was a guy who just got his like master degree at Harvard without ever being at Harvard physically then. So I think it's really powerful to hear that today this is possible. So I think it's very interesting to look at that. And it's not only just the delivery of those services that are for all citizens, for everyone available. Today it's also becoming easier than like 10 years ago, is to secure this kind of delivery. and reduce the risk that you could have if you try to enable this kind of services for individuals under supervision. Another thing I think it's also very interesting to see is the differentiation at all levels. And one of the technologies I'm been following up a couple of years now is everything related to electronic monitoring. If you see, for example, that a couple of years ago, the only thing we knew on that was the ankle bracelet, a thing that can be very intrusive, very creating a lot of problems, even more problems than you would have if you as an individual stay incarcerated. That's another whole other discussion. But at the same time, you see that there is a lot of differentiation in technology that deliver a different level of supervision depending on what is needed, and so within the proportion of what is needed. So starting from just regular verification through just calling a person or using an app, or using kind of RFID tagging to badge in and out facilities or systems, or a smartwatch, or you name it. It's a lot of new things out there that could be used to support the supervision you need based on the regime and the target group you're working on. So I think differentiation is happening more and more in the entire technology world, and it could be also very interesting to have a closer look at when you're thinking to shape detention houses. So the last one was community integration. When we talk about community integration, I was maybe obviously first of all thinking about communication technology. It's not the only aspect that is relevant for community integration, but I think creating the possibility to communicate already between the community and the things that happen outside inside. So that is already something that technology really can be very helpful. I think at that sphere there is a lot of possibilities that we have not even discovered yet today. But definitely modern communicating technology have already shown to be able to support this kind of communities. And I'm not only talking about prisons, I'm also talking about all kind of community networks and social groups who are just working very good today across borders, even that are almost small communities, but physically they are like everywhere in the world. So I think it can be very powerful, and it's a lot of things that we could look at when we looking at this on the context of trying to integrate the small detention houses into the community. And I think when we talk about the community, we have to look broadly. I think the local community in that meaning is very important, and it's really very powerful to have that integration, but the community can be broad. I think community technologies can help also create that integration in a broad way. I was thinking about things that already exist, but that are, in my opinion, not happening enough yet in the existing prisons. I know is the integration with local services, for example, from the city library to the you name it, the local hospital or the local yoga club or something like that. So on every level, I think there is a lot of things that we can do, and definitely technology can facilitate this. Also, the participation in local projects can be facilitated with communication technologies. And I think on this, often we have to be open also to think hybrid. That's something that I have seen in the past, that people often too much think black and white. I think it's hybrid would mean that you facilitate really physical face-to-face meetings, but use communication technology to extend this on moments where it's not able or secure or possible to do that at physical communication. So that's very important concept, the hybrid programs that I think we should think more about. rather than oh no, it will never be possible because of this and this. I think we can be more creative on that. So also work in the community. I think that's something I've discussed about with some prison services already. Is why not on some types of supervision let inmates work really in the community and do work outside, and you can have some technologies that if the individuals you're talking about are at a certain risk of that would not be tolerated to be completely without supervision in the community, that you can use some technologies to monitor them and to watch what they are doing. So there is a lot of possibilities there, and slowly it's happening also. It's always a balance. Everything what you do, it's always a balance. But I think there is a lot of more possibilities today than there were a couple of years ago. So this is a little bit how I quickly looked at the three principles, what I call design principles, that can help us shape in technology and do the exercise if it would be useful for us to support the work we are doing.
Steven, so thank you for also relating technology to the three pillars. And I'm wondering, because also when we think about the concept of detention houses, I think we rarely really integrate the possibilities of technology. And maybe that's also because what you said, the way technology is currently used is mainly on surveillance, efficiency, but not yet very much to the extent for rehabilitation or education. You mentioned a good example, but that is one example. What is the reason that it's not being used in a broad way when it comes to rehabilitation, you think?
I think there are two reasons. First of all, I think the effort, the amount of effort that has been done in prisons as a whole has been much more on security and surveillance. That's independently if it's on technology or not. So the focus has always been very strongly on technology, on security, and so it's the same with technology. I think the second thing is there is still a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear on using technology. When we assessing technology, often we think about the worst inmate or the biggest risk first, and everything has to be adapted to that. I can give you an example. When I was working in Belgium, I introduced the idea of putting a telephone in every cell, in every prison cell, and the discussions I had at that time about the type of telephone to use in that cell. People were telling, are they going to break it? And you use those ruggedized, very expensive devices because they're going to do this. I say, no, I just want to have a normal telephone like here on my desk, something like that. It costs like 20 euros, even less. And I managed to do that. And there was no issue. At the contrary, we reduced kind of aggressivity and we changed the parts of the prison culture thanks to that possibility. But you see in the discussion, what I learned is that people are starting thinking too much on the worst that can happen. And what I learned from my enterprise architecture innovative background is that just organizations, if it's commercial or not commercial, it doesn't matter. They have to overcome fear to be able to be innovative. That's the basic principle, and that's something that is really problematic in prison corrections environment, I think.
Steven, we haven't met, I think, but I came across your name when I was still working as an educational coordinator in the prison of Oudenaarde and Beveren. First of all, it's good for you that you live in the south of France and not working for the Belgian prison system anymore. But since you are gone, actually, there's not a lot that is changed, in my opinion. First of all, I have some remarks. Yeah? The stress on safety is still making it impossible for distance learning to be really implemented in the prison system, even in Belgium, where I think that differentiation is not a differentiation in technology, but actually they should differentiate more inside the prison system for inmates who pose a threat and inmates who don't pose a threat. Because in the basiswet, the basic law of the internal position of the inmates, article, I looked it up while you were speaking, article 64 and 65 forbid all kind of communication outside unless it is specifically toegestaan. Allowed, yeah. And actually in the detention house now, they can have a phone, they can have a smartphone. And actually they are violating the law that is in place because of the, And I think for 70% of the inmates who are even in Beveren or Oudenaarde, which is a high security prison, it would not cause any trouble that they can learn from a distance. And for a long time, when I was an educational coordinator, we were advocating for exams in prison. And thank God for COVID. Until COVID, it was impossible. And since COVID, suddenly cameras appeared. They seen there is no problem. And suddenly also distance learning exams could be in place in place and used as a normal practice. So it always needs a long time to have these changes. And as a remark also on what I would say is that I think that technology inside a prison, or I speak for the Belgian prisons, but since I know the situation, I think I speak also for the French prisons, where there's also no differentiation inside the prison system, that they always want to recreate the outside world inside the prison. That costs a lot of money for rehabilitation that is not there, because the money is always used on security. And you get a very, very slow process of implementing this. When I speak about educational ICT support, because always you are up against the boundaries by the security. And I think it's rather easier to reform the prison system than always implement this ICT. You remember in Beveren, there was the incident with the website of the VDAB. Suddenly, one prisoner have found a solution to communicate in the outside world by sending a job application he could find on the website to a journalist and writing a little comment, which normally is used for sending, "Hey, my friend, I think this is for you." He could use this little box to send messages to the outside world, and therefore there was no way of no way of using this technology, which I think you also were one of the founding fathers from. For 2 years, we could not use the technology.
Philippe, can I ask you to wrap it up, because I also
that's my problem always.
No, I hear a lot of frustration from the use of technology in relation to the prison system, whereas today, what is interesting, and I heard Steven said that as well, and I will give you the floor, Steven, because I'm not the expert, but I did hear Steven say that the paradigm of prison system now is really much focused on security. And what we're trying to understand better is how it can be used in a healthy way when we are creating detention houses. And I know Steven said earlier, not today, but I heard him talk earlier, and then he said, why should we treat people in detention houses any different than we use technology outside? Each one of us is using technology a lot. So why are we afraid to talk about that when it comes to detention houses.
Mhm.
So, Steven, maybe can I ask you to respond?
Yeah, you're right, Veronique. But Philip, thank you for a lot of things you say are something of course I'm familiar with, and also the frustration I can share with you. But I just would like to say one important thing, and you started with that, and that's the concept of the detention law. It's not illegal in Belgium to allow people to use a phone or to communicate. You say it yourself. And the detention law, it said, unless it's allowed. So you can allow it. And the second very important aspect of the detention law, not only in Belgium, but in other jurisdictions as well, is that we should have an individualized detention plan for each individual. And in that context, you should be able to allow inmates to go to the internet, and then you make it meaningful. The only thing, it's not a technological problem, it's an organizational problem, and it's a problem of having enough people to really work with the individuals, having the possibility to work with the individuals, create a meaningful detention plan, and then make the decision. Now you can go on the internet. What we did in Beveren was just switch on off for the entire population, which is completely ridiculous. And I think that's what we just want to achieve with detention houses. Not only the physical smaller scale, but just the way that we can individualize and tailor the approaches to what the individual needs. And technology is there to follow. And the current system in Belgium, the technology part of it, it's able to support this individualized, but it's an organizational problem again. So I think that's the biggest challenge we have always, is the only way to get rid of that black and white discussion, yes or no internet for inmates, is that we start with tailoring our approaches to the individual needs.
I think it's very important to be connected whatsoever. That's what people are made for, to be connected with other people, but especially to be connected with your family, with friends, with institutes that can help you when you get out of prison. And it prevents a lot of stress. And when it comes to stress is more and more is often related to anger or rage or maybe aggression. By the way, all kinds of anxiety is titled by prison guards sometimes as aggression. Why can people be angry, I wonder? So I think it prevents a lot of damage and a lot of helplessness. So it's very important, but you have to check who they are connected with. So you have to be sure it's not used in the wrong way. But I'm not so afraid for misuse in prison. It's overestimated, I think.
Thank you, Leon. I agree with you. I think, and you put in the chat also the self-determination and,
yes,
and autonomy, and I think those are really important things that we take away from inmates when we lock them up in prisons. Maybe a very interesting anecdote related to this is a couple of years ago, I listened to a presentation. It was in the US, something from a kind of entrepreneurship guru who was talking about entrepreneurship and the important skills to learn to people to become an entrepreneur. And then he was talking about decision making and how different the number of decisions people make, how it stimulates their brains. What we are doing, we're putting people in prison. We take away almost all those possibilities to make decisions, knowing that the reason that they are there is because they have made bad decisions often. So, and we want to have them making better decisions when they come out, and we do that by taking away all the possibilities for them to make decisions. So that's a little bit completely insane what we are doing. So I agree with you that I think technology can also help to give people also inside environments more autonomy, and that they should be also motivated to search for information, to of course to communicate. You mentioned that's very important, but also to be actively triggered and motivated to do things themselves. And that's very important, and I think technology can help, and it can be secured again if we take the time to assess which type of individuals, and we work not on the risks but on the needs. It sounds probably familiar with a lot of people who are on the criminological thing, but still we are focusing on risk. Why we always say that we should work much more on strengths and needs, but that's the basic.
There's another important thing, and that is we complain a lot about demotivated prisoners. Well, locking them up and having no autonomy is cause of that. So when you want people to make right choices by decision, understand them by to help them with decision making, or being able to be in outside life, participating in outside life again, it's very important to prevent brain damage. So and when you have access to important things for you, you stimulate more brain connections, which is very important. But we break them up, we damage them actually, the way we incarcerate people. So more autonomy is very important.
No, it's interesting. I was wondering what you both meant with technology stimulates self-determination, but now I understand it's about using, because they have to make choices, like what kind of information you want to look up or who you want to contact.
Call your doctor, say to your teacher that you're not coming today, asking something, having something, and needing something from the municipality. You can call them yourselves. You don't have to be with a guard with a small letter. Please, can I call? So you can do that by yourself. That's very important. Small, simple things, not too.
Yeah, so the same way we use technology in the outside world by making appointments and which,
I've been in prison for a while in the past, and I had the chance to study social work through a vicar that helped me finance the study. I did it in my cell with pen and paper. And like I said in the text, it increased my self-worth immensely. You know, my motivation grew. I had a chance to learn something different than I did in the past. And it really helped me to build a future without being incarcerated or being addicted. So for me, it was it was huge. You know, it started my career in social work that I have for the last 15 years when I got out of prison. So yeah, I wish for everyone who's incarcerated that they had a chance to study anything that they would like to do in the future. And it's increasing self-worth immensely.
So are you saying, because you're saying I didn't do it through technology, but you're saying technology could support many others to...
Yeah, I believe that Google US supplies tablets in prison for inmates to have a chance to follow a course that they are interested in, so they have a chance when they get outside to follow up on that. So I would like to have every inmate hands with a tablet or a computer to follow any kind of course that help them preventing from getting back inside.
Yeah, I agree, Pete. It's very important, and it's moving forward, in my opinion, too slow. But more and more prisons are allowing people to access some online systems, things like that. It comes what Philippe was saying earlier to risk. So they want to block everything. But also, on a professional level, I'm currently working and trying to set up, and I hope to be able to do this year, a kind of a prison school for people inmates who want to learn to program and to code and things like that, because that's an issue in a lot of prisons. So I hope to be able to do that. And I know there are a lot of initiatives on that. But again, today you cannot follow a course anymore without having some kind of access to the online.
In your presentation, very good, very interesting. You mentioned the biometrical monitoring.
Yes.
Could you explain more? And is there some limits to the use of this kind of monitoring regarding especially the respect of privacy? Could you explain more, please?
Yeah. When I say biometrical monitoring, there are in fact two aspects on that, and the most common used is just to do a biometric verification if the person is where he should be. For example, by facial recognition or by a fingerprint or even voice. So what means that, for example, Some use case could be that a person is walking in the community, has his cell phone with the geolocalization, and the social worker or someone who surveys him calls him. The system biometrically recognizes that that's the voice, and it sends the geolocalization. So you have not 100%, but very high proof that the person is definitely where he says he is. That's an example. Another is not calling him, that the person checks in with his smartphone with the face, recognize the face. So technological, there are not much limits on that on a technological basis, but I completely agree. And I have done some work on the ethical principles of using technology in prisons with my colleague, Dr. Victoria Knight. I think you have to always be careful with the data and the things you use. Basic principle is that when you use it, it's in proportion, and you use it for the aim you have created it. That would mean, and that's technological perfectly possible, that, for example, the fingerprint or the face recognition, it's just a kind of a template. We call it. It's a kind of algorithm that's it's set, and it can only be used therefore. So you cannot use the fingerprint for and send it to police that they can use it for anything else. So there are technological also all the things you need to assure that you only use it in that context for the purpose, and that you have consent of the person, that you say, okay, you can go working outside, you can go in the southern of France, helping with the harvest of the grapes. The only thing is you keep your cell phone with you, that's the rule, and we will call you and check. It's perfectly possible. So this is an example of biometrical verification.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
About the European prison rules, at the moment, technology is not a part of it, as far as I know, not at all. And part of the WISH EU project is that we will write European rules on small-scale detention facilities. And we would like to include technology. What would be your advice?
I would include it in some very generic way, because technology as such, and I think the question from Maria Odile was very relevant to that, is as such should not be able to determine rules. The rules come from elsewhere. When I talk about, for example, privacy, we talk about the principle of proportionality, which comes from Beccaria in the 18th century. Personality comes from Beccaria in the 18th century. So the principles, the reasons are there. We've talked earlier about the individual detention plan in Belgium. We have it already for more than 25 years. The only thing is we don't do it. So I would advise to just say that technology can be helpful and should be able to use within the concepts that you already have in place. So we can say, of course, maybe as a reminder that it has to be ethical, but of course we have to work all ethical. There are rules on using artificial intelligence, there are rules on using biometrics, there are privacy rules, they are there. The only thing is that we always try to reinvent the wheel, but in fact we know that it should be within proportion and individualized, and we should take care of the different types of data and categorizing of data. We have the law enforcement directives, we have the GDPR laws. The majority of the people incarcerated are basically citizens before they are anything else. So yeah, something generic and maybe repeating things that pure from a legal standpoint should not be repeated, but to assure people that we still keep them in mind.
It's great to talk about what we already use in prison, the technology that we are using right now. But I think that the problem with implementing technology in prison as it currently exists is that it's happened in an established context, and often what we see is that it's mostly serving the punitive logic of the carceral institution. And I think that right now, with the small-scale detention project, we have this opportunity to think from the start, to think about how we can think technology and articulate them with a new way of thinking about detention. And you were talking about transformation and innovation, and I think it's very important to be smart and careful about what we are thinking when we are talking about innovation. Is it do we want to do something new or to do the same thing differently? So I think that there is really a great opportunity with this project to think about how we can implement technology and just think of a new way of detention that include technology.
Thank you, Annelies. I completely agree with you. Something you could really, and we should take the opportunity to think from the basic ground on what do we need. So what is also something I showed you the slide on digital transformation, a lot of reading because we are finishing our study on digital maturity in prison settings. Is that the fact that sometimes organizations, and it's not different in prisons, is that think that, oh, there is a new technology, let's use it, and then we will be modern, and then we will be fancy, then we'll be so that's often a lot of technologies are lying there on the shelf or are not used, just have been invested and thrown away. So we always have to think, what do we want to achieve here? What is our goal? What is the need that we want to? What's the problem we want to solve? And that's often forgotten when people talk about technology, because new technology are there. Yes, cloud computing. Let's go all to cloud computing. Everyone is putting all his data in the cloud, in big data centers. It's completely ridiculous in time of climate change. We are just putting all the energy. It's off track. Sorry, Veronique, but it's a technological thing that we see happening. We put all our data. We just spending a lot of energy in pushing our things to the cloud and back, and to the cloud and back. While currently people are working on what they call edge computing, because we have like servers with the capacity or the smartphones in our hand today. So it's a technological concept, but it's always that because things are new, we think that we should use it. No, the basic aspect of digital transformation, in my opinion, is think about technology, but also think about where it's good not to use technology.
I put my question in the chat, and I was thinking about my experience during COVID and the alienating effects of digitalization of human contact. So related to that, and thinking about that we, by using too much technology, we are designing out distance, legitimizing our prison system. Connecting to that again, how do you estimate the risk that proximity is replaced by digital techniques and connection, thus blurring the essence of small-scale community integrated facilities? Because maybe then we will not establish transformation in detention and sanctioning, but we will legitimize our current prison system more and more. So that's a kind of dilemma I feel thinking about. Of course, there are all those good examples of using of technologies and things like that in education, in development and things like that. But this might be a risk, I guess, using technology instead of nearness in our small-scale detention concept. How would you think about that, react on that?
First of all, I acknowledge that this is a risk. This is something that I think we have to be very, very careful thinking about that. Proximity is something that's at risk kind of everywhere in our society. So it will also be at risk if we look at technology that can solve things. Technology can solve communication, but I agree with you, the really proximity and also the human aspect of communication, it cannot be replaced by technology. That's one of the reasons what I mentioned in one of my slides. Please be able to look at hybrid solutions. Keep the aspects of the human, the value of human contact, of feeling, smelling, the real impression of human contact. Keep this in the center of the work you are doing, and see technology as a way to extend it and improve even and enhance the communication. But it's a difficult one. As soon as we talk about saving money, or as soon as we talk about let's some efficiency gains, we have sometimes the attitude of going directly into that technology track and thinking that we forgot everything. It's a very difficult, complex situation. It's not only about communication and proximity. It's a role of human in all kinds of. You have probably followed the whole thing of ChatGPT and artificial intelligence, all those kind of things. We have to be very careful with it. We have to be always, for every project and every concept, we have to analyze this in the context we are working. And I think and I'm also learned in the work I've done doing in the field, that this is the only way that really overcomes reduces that risk, is to assess this over and over again in the specific context with the type of people where you're working it. So that's the only way you can do it. It's not, you can never say, okay, this type of technology or this type of technology has a high or lower risk than this. No, you have to look at the context where you're working it and keep the human at the center.
I do agree with Gerd. I didn't intervene so far, but that was in my mind. First, to learn about the COVID experience we had. We've seen what it means to have a lot of technology and to have less possibilities of going around freely. We stay at home and we sit in front of screens. Taking into concern that in the last years of research about desistance, about good lives models and so on, it focuses on socialization, it focuses on social contacts, on interactions, how to learn to interact with other people in a non-aggressive, non-problematic, in a peaceful way, taking into account that many of our prisoners in Western Europe or in all the world can't read or write, taking into account that currently around 20, 30, 40% of the prisoners have psychiatric troubles. I think the technology is very useful, can be very useful, but it's a niche. It's a niche, and it's not, I guess it's not the main concern of this very exciting project you're doing with small scale detention facilities. All the other topics we had so far, I think they're really important for this project. I think technologies are for small scale detention facilities. We should be open. We should have exchange between inside and outside. I think technology might have a side effect, which, in my opinion, would be rather negative than positive for small scale facilities. But yeah, it's just a concern. It's not a question, and it's not an argument against technology. It's just, for the moment and for this very exciting project, if we write European rules on small scale detention facilities, technology should be not one of the main aspects, as we have nowadays in all parts of public policies. That's my concern. Digital data, big data, 4 or 5G, internet, mobility, it's in all public policies, for health policy, for school, for education, and so on. So I would have a problem if for correctional policies, IT technologies are also one of the main hope or one of the main arguments to say we can renovate it, we can modernize it. Thanks.
Thank you, Pascal, for sharing. I say some of the elements I think I also put when Veronique was asking about European prison rules. I think you should not overemphasize the fact that technology should be like separate in a separate chapter and things like that. I think technology is a mean, nothing more than that. It's not. So it's. But I think at least that you should be able to putting something to avoid the negative side effects of implementing technology. So that's important. I also think that there are possible use, and you don't contradict me on that. So I agree. It's depending on what you say, but that I think we have kind of different opinions. I think the importance of technology today cannot be underestimated. Also, we have to be very, very careful that it has changed the way we our people are communicating today, and the way that social interaction happens. So we have to at least think about it. Don't say emphasize what's happening outside, nothing else, but at least think about it, not ignore it, because it's important for the people we will have under our supervision anyway. Maybe a last thing I would like to share in the context of what you were saying is that when we have implemented Prison Cloud in Beveren many years ago, we saw a big difference in the impact of using the system and depending on the regime on the wing where it's used. So Beveren, the Prison Cloud system, for people who are familiar with that, is a kind of in-cell digital solution. And there has been done some research by the VUB in Brussels on that. And the research revealed a little bit what we in fact already knew, is that on that wing, where there is a very closed regime, where people spend the most of the time in the cell, very strict, that technology had like a kind of tendency to isolate inmates even further. That creates more frustration and mental problems. At the other hand, in the wing, where there is a very open regime, there were like conversations about, and inmates were free to walk in each other's cell and help them and say, oh, you have to see that and you can follow that course and things like that. We see that the research revealed like it emphasized a lot of the good aspects of the regime and the openness, and it creates more interaction between the inmates. So it's not a huge multi-prison international research, but it already showed that I think technology can make bad things worse, but also good things better, and that's how you use it. So I don't think that we should ignore it. I also don't think we should overemphasize it. I come back to my basic saying, let's look at what is the problem we want to achieve, and maybe technology can, or maybe technology cannot help us with that.
Thank you. If I can add to that as well, Pascal, you were mentioning about the European rules for detention houses and our goal, and why technology to you might not be one of the more important topics of the Learning Lab sessions. To me, it is, and the reason Reskilled started is that we want people to be part of society. And we are here on our laptops or computers. Every one of us has a phone. We are looking up information constantly on the internet. So why should that be any different from people in a detention house?